Baruch Hashem and Baruch Haba. Welcome to our advanced study here at Congregation Mashiach Yisrael. My name is Scott Siskin, and tonight we're going to be studying chapter 12 of Tanya. We prayed in our last portion here. We're still on the same day, so we're going to go ahead and keep moving forward here. If I find my place. Chapter 12 is the chapter about the Beinani. We spoke last chapter a little bit about everything that the Alter Rebbe is talking about here. The Alter Rebbe began Tanya with this famous verse, Deuteronomy chapter 30, verse 14. Kikara ve'elecha hadover ma'od beficha u'lavavcha la'asoto. This thing, what thing? Torah and mitzvahs. It's very near to you in your mouth and your heart that you should do it. The Alter Rebbe says, oh, really? Because natural human experience tells me that that's not exactly true, right? For me, I'm afraid of earthquakes, chas v'sholem, and I love a nice biscotti, you know? Whatever the case may be, it's not natural for us to love and fear God with our heart. So the Alter Rebbe goes to try to explain this to us using the long, shorter way. The long, shorter way, again, is this concept that we can change our attributes, not just our garments. Again, our attributes are Chochma, Bina, Da'at, Chesed, Gebur, Teferet, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, and Malchut. And our garments are thought, speech, and deed. It's easy to change our thought, speech, and deed. Anybody, anywhere in the world can do that pretty much instantly, right? Which is why they are referred to as garments. Because you could change them quickly. The 10 soul powers, however, intellect and emotion, split up into those 10 parts, is much more difficult to change. But it's possible. That's the long, shorter way. Can you change who you are, not just how you respond? That's the difference between a tzaddik and a beinani. So in chapter 10, we talked about the tzaddik. How do we define a tzaddik? Tzaddik means a righteous person. How do we define a tzaddik?
He is completely put under subjugation the evil inclination.
He has a godly soul. He has an animal soul. The godly soul is bringing forth this Yetzer Tov, this good inclination. I want to do Torah. I want to do mitzvahs. I want to do God stuff. And the animal soul is bringing selfish thoughts, right? The animal soul is saying, I want more, I want now. And that's helpful to keep us alive in the wilderness. The fact of the matter is we weren't just meant to live in the wilderness for our lives. God wants us to mature. So the tzaddik is one who's starting to conquer this animal within. And he's not just mastering his thoughts and his speech and his actions, but he's actually mastering his intellect and his emotions as well, right? He's getting to a point where he is no longer even tempted. Right? That's a tzaddik. Maybe it's a little bit. Maybe it's a lot of it. But that's the program. Okay? We talked last chapter, in chapter 11, about the Rasha. What is a Rasha?
Bad dude.
He's that guy, right? He's a sinner. May God protect us and forgive us.
Wicked one is what it means, right?
Rasha means a wicked person, right? One who engages in sin. We talked about the 1% Rasha, who is he barely ever transgresses at all, and if he does sin, it's few and far between. And if he does, it's only a borderline. It's not even really a sin, but the Torah still calls him wicked. We have another person, and if he does something like that, he's immediately overcome with remorse and regret and resolve, and he feels terrible about it, and he wants to run back to God, and he feels so terrible, right? Then there's the middle of the road Rasha, like most of the people we see out there. God bless us and forgive us and protect us. And these people are, they engage in sin more often. It's actual sins this time. It's with all 3 garments at once. It happens more often, right? But how can you tell that they're not completely wicked person?
They feel bad about it.
They feel terrible about it immediately afterwards. They're usually pretty close afterwards, right? Mm-hmm. They do something last night, and the next morning they wake up, oy vey, what did I do, right? This is typical. May God forgive us and protect us. So these people are overcome with guilt. They're overcome with remorse. All the time they're feeling sorry. All the time they're doing tshuva. All the time they're coming back. And they still go back out after they come back. Right? Then we talked about the third kind of Rasha. This is the pathological, the sociopath who he feels no regret, no remorse at all. Okay? And that's the spectrum. So if we just bring our handy-dandy charts here. This is the chart we made for the Rasha last week. The Rasha, again, if you're 100% Rasha, you feel zero guilt. If you feel all the guilt in the world every time you do something, you're not a Rasha at all, right? And that should be compared to our chart of the tzaddik, right? The tzaddik, if you're a perfect tzaddik, you have a 0% love for evil. If you have 100% love for evil, you're not a tzaddik at all. Right? And these are our little handy-dandy charts that we made last week and the week before, or earlier tonight and the week before. So that brings us to chapter 12. Chapter 12 talks about the Beinoni. The Beinoni, again, is the intermediate. He's not a tzaddik. He's not a rasha. But what did we just say? The tzaddik is one who never thinks sinful thoughts, speaks sinful words, or does sinful actions. And the rasha is one who does. How is there an in-between there? What's the difference?
And the Beinoni still has to master his.
He's not. That's perfect answer. Torah point for you.
Thank you.
This Beinoni, this person, he has mastered his thoughts, his speech, and his deed, but he has not mastered his intellect and emotion. He still thinks about sin. He still wants to sin, right? Mm-hmm. Not in active thoughts, but thoughts will come into his head. Mm-hmm. So our handy-dandy map of Tanya here has given us an introduction on chapter 12. It says, the Beinoni allows no expression of the garments of the animal soul. The animal soul and the godly soul are doing battle over the body. The animal soul never gets a foothold ever. The Beinoni toes the line always. Only the godly soul, desiring Torah and mitzvot, has control over these garments at all times. However, the Beinoni still battles the evil inclination. He still feels tempted. He still wants to sin, but he doesn't. Right? This is like an addict. Mm-hmm. This is like who God set us out to be. Most people. And again, one of the premises of Tanya here, Deuteronomy chapter 30, verse 14, anybody could be a Beinoni. Anybody can master their thoughts, their speech, and their actions. God made us upright. What's the difference between mankind and every other beast?
We can walk.
We walk. What does that mean? Our head is above our heart. Our head is higher than our heart, and we can always control it. Mm-hmm. May not always be easy. In fact, most of the time it's not. However, we can. It's possible. Mm-hmm. So with that as an introduction, who would like to begin reading chapter 12? You did last time, so.
I'll read.
Thank you, sir. Rabbi Yochanan.
The Beinoni intermediate is he in whom evil never attains enough power to capture the, quote, small city.
The body. So
as to clothe itself in the body and make it sin. That is to say, the three garments, I thought you were going to say something, of the animal soul, namely thought, speech, and actions, originating in the klipa, do not prevail within him over the divine soul to the extent of clothing themselves in the body, in the brain, in the mouth, in the other 248 parts, thereby causing them to sin and defiling them. Chas v'sholem.
So the 248 parts here, we were told that the human body has 248 limbs to it. If that seems crazy to you, they're 206 bones alone, right? Add to that the liver and the lungs and the heart and everything else, and the skin is an organ too, and the hair and all that other stuff. You get to 248, no problem.
Only the three garments of the divine soul, they alone are implemented in the body, being the thought, speech, and act engaged in the 613 commandments of the Torah. Mm-hmm. He has never committed, nor ever will commit, any transgression. Neither can the name, quote, wicked be applied to him even temporarily, or even for a moment throughout his life.
So we just said a lot of stuff here that kind of makes us... Wait, what did he just say? Mm-hmm. He has never committed, nor will ever commit, any sin. Oh, really? Well, what if he did? If you sin once, can you be a Beinoni?
Not for a hot second until you do Yeshua.
Until you do Teshuvah, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you sin and you do Teshuvah, what are you called? Clean. Mm-hmm. Clean, right? Mm-hmm. You're not called a sinner. Right. You're not called a sinner. You repented. You dealt with it. It's over. When the Bible talks about Job and says that Job is a righteous person, does it mean that Job never sinned a day in his life? Mm-mm. Or does it mean that Job was a mature believer who, when he sinned, he repented, he brought it to God, he said, I'm sorry, this is a thing, can we work this out? And God said, of course we can work this out, this isn't a problem, I'm going to wash it away, I'm going to remove it as far as the east is from the west, and we're not going to deal with it anymore. Right?
This is like David, King David.
Absolutely, and David is raised to a level like the patriarchs, right? Mm-hmm. Even though he sinned. So, okay, let's say he never committed, but now he did Teshuvah. How could you possibly justify the next line? Nor will he ever commit. Nor will he ever commit. The Rebbe explains this, I believe. He says, the way he feels today, his connection with God now, it's like he's never sinned and he never will sin because of his connection with God right now. Right now. And we're going to talk about that later in Tanya, because we're going to bring into this concept of truth. Okay, is that true? Right? He's never going to sin. The greatest tzaddik could sin tomorrow, right? There's a story about a incredibly righteous man who was a perfect tzaddik for like 80 years, 79 years or something like that. He was a high priest. He was like a really good guy. I'm not sure if all these details are right. But a very long time he was like a tzaddik. And then at the end of his life he sinned and he died. So even the most righteous among us could sin tomorrow. That said, the way this person feels today, it's like he never sinned and he never will sin, right? He's totally with God. He's like a tzaddik. He's shining, this guy, right? Does that make sense?
I think so.
A little bit?
However, the essence and being of the divine soul, which are its 10 faculties, do not constantly hold undisputed sovereignty and sway over the small city, except at appropriate times, such
What's
as
an example of appropriate time? Go ahead.
during the recital of the Shema or the Amida, which is a time when the supernal intellect is in a sublime state. And likewise below, this is a propitious time for every man when he binds his
Chabad.
Chabad, intellectual faculties to God. Oh, right. Chokmah bina da'at. To God, to meditate deeply on the greatness of the Ein Sof, blessed be He,
The infinite one.
and to arouse the burning love in the right part of his heart to cleave to Him by virtue of the fulfillment of the Torah and its commandments out of love.
So let's just take a look here at this a little bit. We have this Beinani. Okay, we say that he is in this connection with God. It's so dynamic. It's so powerful. It's like he never sinned. It's like he never will sin. Okay, we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. We don't know what happened back in the past. But right now, he's really godly, you know. And we know that this guy, back from the very beginning, he never sins, right? In his thoughts, in his speech, in his action, he never sins. So why isn't he a tzaddik? Certainly during the time when he's reciting the Shema, this is like the most intense time for Jews, right? When you put your hands over your eyes and you say Shema Yisrael. This, you're willing to give up your life for God at this moment. He looks like a tzaddik. What about when you're saying the Amida and he's quiet and he's his feet are together and he's standing in prayer to God and he's saying this very special prayer? At this time, he looks like a tzaddik. So why isn't he a tzaddik? Please read on.
Actually, if I understand what you've taught, that at that moment he is
Right then.
a tzaddik.
And we're going to talk about what truth is later. But that's true for him.
But
then.
not all of it. Which makes him a Bennett.
We're gonna find he looks like this now, but the fact that he doesn't always look like this is that's exactly right. That's gonna be part of it.
This is the essential aspect of the Shema, the recital of which is enjoined by the Torah, and of the blessings which precede and follow it, which are a rabbinical enactment. The
Blessings
latter
for the
being
Shema.
the preparation for the fulfillment of the recital of the Shema, as is explained elsewhere.
So we have in our Siddur, in our prayer book, when we're getting ready to say the Shema, we have this whole build-up, right, where we think about angels, and then we think about how God loves us even over the angels, and it's supposed to bring us to this place where we become a Beinani, is what it's supposed to do, right?
That's pretty much on the Shabbat,
It's every day.
right? Is
Every-
it every day
in the morning.
Angels too?
Oh, yeah.
Kadosh.
Kadosh, yeah.
Okay.
At such time, the evil that is in the left part is subjected to and nullified in the goodness that is diffused in the right part from the wisdom, understanding, and knowledge, Chabad, in the brain, which are bound in the greatness of the Ein Sof, blessed be He.
He's Baruch. So let's pump the brakes for a second. We'll talk about the battle again. What's the battle? This section is the battle between the souls. What are we battling? What's the fight? Give us a one-liner.
Evil inclination.
Evil inclination is fighting
The godly soul.
the good inclination, the godly soul.
Over the small city?
Over the body, right? So when you are fighting, there are certain times you know not to engage, right? When is a good time to engage? Ever hear about the element of surprise, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's classic in warfare, right? Read Sun Tzu's Art of War. When you're engaging an enemy, better they should not know you're coming. Why? Because they're not going to be strong then, right? So the evil inclination, the Yetzer Hara, the animal soul, the Satan, is going to, when he sees you, this evil inclination within you, your animal soul, is when it's seeing you praying, and you're saying the Shema, and you just put your hands over your eyes to acknowledge to God how much you love Him and how much you're willing to sacrifice your life for Him. Is that a wonderful time for the evil inclination to get a foothold? It's not going to stand a chance. The evil inclination's smart, right? It's going to find a way to be able to make sure that its job gets done. So when's not a good time to fight this nice little Beinoni? When he's got his talus on, when he's got his tefillin on, when he's saying Shema, his eyes are covered. This is not a wonderful time for me to fight. When's a better time for
tired, hungry, angry, lonely?
Anytime when he is off kilter. Anytime when he's off kilter, right? So this is what the last part of this paragraph is saying, right? At such a time, the evil that's in the left part, it's subjugated to, it's nullified. The evil inclination is hibernating right now because it knows that it's useless. It's not going to be able to do it. Okay? However,
after prayer, when the state of sublimity of the intellect of the Ein Sof, blessed is He, departs,
the Beinoni is no longer mind melding with the Holy One, blessed be.
The evil in the left part reawakens,
Wakes
and he begins to feel a desire for the lusts of the world and its delights.
So what happens when the nice Jew is sitting there and he's got his talus over his head and he's got his tefillin on his arm and over his head and he's covering his eyes? He's like one with God right there. I mean, he's like really holy right then. You can reach incredible potential heights in prayer. So what does the evil inclination do? It waits. It waits until the talus comes off and the tefillin, go back in the bag and you kiss the bag and then you go out into the rat race of life and you...
Now
what did Rabbi Gordon say?
Right?
Yeah. He said you're sitting there in your 3 martini lunch and now the evil inclination is going to be like, well, what about this?
On the third martini.
On that third. That's where it comes. So, we got a picture?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yet because evil has not the sole authority and dominion over the city, it is unable to carry out this desire from the potential into the actual by clothing itself in the bodily limbs, in deed, speech, and persistent thought.
Remember
to the extent of...
Remember, the Beinoni never sins. In thought, in speech, in deed, he doesn't. And if he did, he repented. Right?
Mm-hmm.
In deed, speech, and persistent thought to the extent of concentrating his attention on the enjoyment of the mundane pleasures as to how to satisfy the lust of his heart. Because the brain rules over the heart, as explained by Raya Mehemna,
The Faithful Shepherd.
Parshat Pinchas.
This is the part of the Zohar traditionally authored by Moshe Rabbeinu, and it's what we said, I think, just a couple of minutes ago. God created mankind upright, so that our head should be over our heart, mind over matter. And that doesn't just mean... What did Rabbi Gordon say? If you don't mind, it doesn't matter.
It's not just a cliche.
It's not a cliche. You literally could want something so bad that it's making you shake and sweat. And you can make your brain say no. Humans have that potential. If you're a regular, normal, capable human, you can do this.
In other words, the brain can overrule the heart.
Can overrule, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to, this isn't a bio class, but if you look at the nerves that connect the brain to the heart, the main nerve is called the vagus nerve. I think we talked about it a little bit before. The vagus nerve primarily sends a signal of shut down, stop, turn off, cool it down, right? Because the heart by itself just wants to beat and beat and beat.
Oh.
And it'll beat itself out. So the brain's always sending signals, slow down, it's okay, stop, we're fine. Right?
Everything is okay.
Literally, we could look at our bodies and see the spiritual reality.
It works in the spirit of Gevurah.
That's exactly how it works.
Mm-hmm.
Cool intellect.
Because the brain rules over the heart, as explained in the Raya Mehemna Parshat Pinchas, by virtue of its innately created nature.
Right.
For this is how man is created from birth, that each person may, with the willpower in his brain, restrain himself and control the drive of lust that is in his heart, preventing his heart's desires from expressing themselves in action, word, or thought, and divert his attention altogether from the craving of his heart toward the completely opposite direction, particularly in the direction of holiness. Thus it is written, "Then I saw that wisdom surpasses folly, as light surpasses darkness." This means that just as light has a superiority...
Right?
What?
Ecclesiastes.
Chapter 2.
This means that just as light has a superiority, power, and dominion over darkness, so the little physical light banishes a great deal of darkness, which is therewith inevitably superseded as a matter of course and necessity, so is much foolishness of the Kalipa and the Sitra Achra, as indeed our sages say, a man does not sin unless a spirit of folly enters into him.
Ruach Shtus.
Didn't Rabbi go and make note of that verse in his...
Absolutely true. So this is pretty plain, right? We're talking about your animal soul, your evil inclination, demonic force, whatever you want to call it, is coming and it's whispering a little sweet nothing into your ear, right? And saying, yeah, you could go for another helping of dessert, right? Yeah, you could go for, and remember, we're talking about a Bainani here, right? If you're at your 3-martini lunch, the Bainani might be tempted for another martini. He's not going to be tempted for a ham sandwich, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is going to be stuff that the evil inclination knows it can get a foothold in. It's going to suggest to you an idea, and you're going to have this idea pop into your head. So the sinful thing is to think about that thought again, right? The whole idea, this whole snowball effect, you have a negative thought come into your head, and if you can shut it down there and replace it with your last Torah thought, you don't have to go down that rabbit hole. However, if you give it a second thought and a third thought, and okay, well, let me see when the waiter's by next, and now you're meditating on it, you're contemplating it, you're filling yourself up with it, it's going to be a lot easier to sin at that point. And all that happened because the evil inclination stuck a little foot in the door, right? That's called Ruach Shtus, the idea of a spirit of folly. Shtus. Like Shota, right? Shota means a fool. So, Shtut. If you have a situation where your intellect or your emotions were convinced that what you're about to do is not against God in any way, then what's stopping you from doing it, right? That's the evil inclination's job, to try to fool you with the spirit of folly, the spirit of foolishness, into thinking that what you're about to do is not going to separate you from God. When in reality, we eat to serve God. We don't live to eat, right? Mm-hmm. And that's just one example. That goes through all of the 613 mitzvot.
So as much foolishness of the Klipa and Sitra Achra, as indeed our sages say, a man does not sin unless a spirit of folly enters into him, inevitably driven away by the wisdom that is in the divine soul, in the brain.
Remember, the Bainani, he never sins. So when he experiences this thought, what's his response? He's a Bainani. What's his response?
No, I'm not doing it.
He pushes it out of his mind. He stops thinking about that. He starts thinking about his last Torah portion that he studied, right? Anything. He pushes that thought out of his mind. Mm-hmm. If he dwells on that thought, he's a Russia, right? Because he's thinking now a sinful thought. Mm-hmm. We can't control the things that come into our heads. We can control the things we dwell on, we meditate on, we contemplate about, right? Mm-hmm. That's where the Bainani is strong. That's where the Bainani is going to say, no, I'm not going to think about that. Mm-hmm. However, unlike the tzaddik, the Bainani still gets these thoughts that come in, right? Whereas the tzaddik has refined and controlled and subjugated his intellect and emotion to the extent where these thoughts aren't coming anymore, right? To some extent.
Whose desire is to rule alone in the city and to pervade the whole body,
the godly soul,
in the manner already mentioned, by means of her 3 garments, namely, thought, speech, and act of the 613 commandments of the Torah as explained earlier.
Right, that's the goal of the godly soul, right? The godly soul is going to want to connect to God in everything that we can do. In all of your ways, know God, right? That's the godly soul. Thoughts?
What's interesting...
Words and deeds.
Words and deeds. Please.
A person volitionally, with their will, are presented with opportunities all the time to determine whether or not your ratzon is going to be in alignment with the will of God.
Hashem's, sure.
Right? And so the whole thing is well, there's a place where Yaakov writes, submit yourself to God and resist
all of these forces of
the other
negativity
guy,
that we've been talking about. Right.
The bad.
The klipot.
Right?
The evil inclination.
And he will flee from you.
That's exactly it.
Oh,
Where did we hear that first in the Torah?
So resisting must be preceded by subjection.
Right? You can't
submit
serve both
yourself,
God and...
which is a volitional, yielding, submitting, must precede authority or power to resist. You don't just reach in your pocket and pull out the resistance.
Right, exactly. That's like resistance training, right? This is something that happens to us repetitively over time. Mm-hmm. And again, this is a little bit like our conversation earlier about this concept of being born again. We need the experience of life to be able to teach us how to harness our animal soul, right? It's very important.
Nevertheless, such a person is not deemed a tzaddik at all, because the superiority which the light of the divine soul possesses over the darkness and foolish of the kalipa, wherewith the latter is expelled forthwith, exists only in the aforementioned three garments, but does not extend to its very essence and being in relation to those of the klipa.
That's like the most important line of this here, chapter 12. Nevertheless, this person who had the talus over his head and he had the tefillin on and he's saying Shema Yisrael and he's really in rapturous prayer right now and he looks like a tzaddik. A couple hours later, you see him in his 3 martini lunch and you see how he's He's target for the forces of temptation, right? He's susceptible, thank you, to temptation, right? You see retroactively that he wasn't a tzaddik, right? In fact, it's just that his godly soul, which always overpowers his animal soul. It always happens. He never sins. And if he does, he repents. However, that godly soul is not on it all the time like the tzaddik is, because the animal soul has, what? Not been converted to godliness at all, right? Those 10 powers of the animal soul, thought, or intellect and emotion, have not been transformed to godliness at all. It's still animal. It's still selfish, right? So the Beinoni is different from the tzaddik. How? Because the tzaddik doesn't have to fight. The Beinoni battles every day, right? Rabbi Gordon talked one time about the...
has not only mastered his thoughts, words, and deeds, but also subjugated his intellect and emotions. Those last two, that the Beinoni has not completely subjugated.
He's not even started. Remember, a tzaddik who subjugates his animal soul 1% is a tzaddik she'eina gomer. He's an incomplete tzaddik.
Okay.
So this is one who hasn't done that at all.
Mm-hmm.
However, he controls his thought, speech, and actions. He toes the line, right?
Mm-hmm.
Rabbi Gordon tells a story. He tells it often about a alcoholic, right?
Oh,
and
right.
He says, he knows this guy or whatever. He's been, in recovery for 25 years. He hasn't had a drink. And he says, 25 years, and you still call yourself an alcoholic? Why did you do that? You're obviously not, someone would say. And what does the alcoholic respond? I am an alcoholic, right? Mm-hmm. Why? Because every day I want to get up and I want to drink, right? Mm-hmm. Every day I fight that fight. Mm-hmm. And this is so critically important. If you learn nothing else from Tanya, learn this. This is so critically important about your relationship with God. Because you sit there and you're studying Torah, or you're praying, or you're going to shul, or you're doing whatever it is that you're doing, Baruch Hashem, good on you. And then 2 hours later, you're sitting in the filth, right? You're sitting in the muck, in the mire, in the mud and the blood and the beer. And you're like, why isn't God helping me? Or why am I obviously just not doing it right? Or all those things that we tell ourselves. You are not a schizophrenic. You are a compound entity, right? You have a good inclination, you have an evil inclination. Let me tell you, when the good inclination is in a good spot, surrounded by good people who want to do godly stuff, it's going to shine way brighter than the evil inclination.
Right.
When you're surrounded by other people or other places where it's not so godly maybe, then your evil inclination is going to be a lot stronger. So it's not because you are a schizophrenic, it's because you are a compound entity, right? Don't give up Torah and mitzvahs because you had a negative thought when you were done with them, right?
Shaul, Romans chapter 7.
Thank you.
All right.
Let's
go.
Okay.
Okay.
For in the Beinoni, the essence and being of the animal soul, from the klipa in the left part remains undislodged after prayer.
Right. The Beinoni did not uproot the animal soul and transform it to godliness. It just suppressed it. Right.
Remains undislodged after prayer. For then the burning love of God is not in a revealed state in his heart, in the right part, but is only inwardly paved with hidden love, that is, the natural adoration of the divine soul, as will be explained later.
So the Alter Rebbe is introducing here a concept with a one-liner, this ahavat misuteret, this hidden love that exists within every Jew, anyone with this godly soul, okay? And again, you can get one if you get grafted in. The whole next section that we're talking about in the green here, what is it, chapters 18 through 25, I believe, is talking about this hidden love. What is the hidden love? How do you access it? What happens when you access it? So we're going to talk about that a bunch later.
Therefore it is possible for the folly of the wicked fool to rise openly in the left part of his heart, creating a lust for all material things of this world, whether permitted or, God forbid, prohibited, as if he had not prayed at all.
Right, so what's a permissible thing that the animal soul would desire? Seconds and dessert, right? What's a forbidden thing? A ham sandwich. Make sense?
Nevertheless, in regard to...
or your third martini.
Nevertheless, in regard to a forbidden matter, it does not occur to him to actually violate the prohibition.
Chas v'sholom. Remember, this is a Beinoni. He doesn't sin. He's never going to want a ham sandwich.
And it remains in the realm of sinful thoughts, which are more serious than actual sin.
So let's push the pause button here, as Rabbi Gordon says, for a second.
Sinful thoughts, which are more serious than actual sin.
When we talk about natural colloquialisms, we speak about people say, psychologists say this. What a mistake. When they say, so long as you don't do the sin, you can fantasize about it all day long, right? The fact of the matter is, Torah says the same thing. Not the same thing. Torah says, so long as you don't do it, I'm asking you not to do it, right? However, do, we understand, means your actions, your words, and your thoughts, right? So if you have 3 garments, your thoughts, your speech, and your deed, which is the most external to you?
Deed.
Deed, right? You hit a foul ball, right? Is that because you're a foul ball hitter? No, I just hit a foul ball, right? It could be a home run next time, right? It's an external garment. It's like your coat. Then you have a shirt, a nice button-up shirt, right? That's like speech. It's the intermediate garment. Then you have your undershirt or your underwear, right? So long as you don't sin, you're in good shape, right? However, if you listen to a lot of modern psychologists out there and they say, yeah, don't sin, but you could fantasize about the sin until the cows come home. Is it worse to have mud on your outer coat or have mud on your underwear?
Outer coat.
Why?
I mean, on your underwear is worse.
On your underwear is way worse, right?
Yeah,
why? Because that's like a more intimate internal garment, right?
Well, statistics prove you go where your mind, it all starts in your mind.
That's
what you
true
think
too.
Is what you will do.
Right, remember, and we haven't talked about it yet, actually, but we're going to talk about in Tanya very shortly, in the next couple of chapters, that everything runs in this 5-step progression. Intellect, emotion, thought, speech, deed, right? You never do anything before you think about it.
Right, you gotta think
even if it's a microsecond that you thought about it. So, while regular Judaism says, just don't do the sin, and the regular world says, just don't do the sin, Chassidus explains, dwelling on sin, actively thinking about sin is also a sin. And it's going to mess you up just as bad, if not worse. Chas v'sholom. So I just thought that was important to say.
Sinful thoughts which are more serious than actual sin, and which can be forceful enough to rise to his mind to distract him from the Torah and divine service, as our sages said. There are 3 sins against which a man is daily not safeguarded. Sinful thoughts, distraction in prayer. I thought that was like 2.
That's 2. The last one, I believe, is gossip. Oh, wait, here's in 15. Any day that you exist, you're going to sin these 3 sins. The sins are sinful thoughts. A Beinoni can't control what comes into his thoughts. He can control the second thought, not the first. Right? A distraction in prayer, also a distraction in Torah study. Right? Similar kind of thing. You maybe didn't go deep enough in your prayer. You maybe didn't go deep enough in your Torah study when you, the person, was able to, and you didn't. And then the last one is gossip. If you're around any other person ever, the fact that you're probably going to end up talking a little bit of Lashon Hara at some point, or borderline Lashon Hara, is pretty much unavoidable. Which, again, is why we, who are aware, need to be so careful when we speak to other people, when we speak about other people. We really need to lock that stuff up. Okay.
However, the impression of prayer on the intellect and the hidden, i.e. innate fear and love of God in the right part of the heart, enable one to prevail and triumph over this evil of passionate craving, depriving it from gaining supremacy and dominion over the city, and from carrying on this desire from the potential into the actual of clothing itself in the bodily organs.
Right, so the godly soul is more powerful than the animal soul in this person. At least it's more revealed to an extent where the person's not going to engage in sin in thought, speech, or deed. This is what we've been saying pretty much the whole time.
Moreover, even in the mind alone, insofar as sinful thoughts are concerned, evil has no power to compel the mind's volition to entertain willingly, chas v'sholem, any wicked thought rising of its own accord from the heart to the brain, as discussed above.
Right, so again, mind over heart, not vice versa.
But no sooner does it reach there than he thrusts it out with both hands and averts his mind from it the instant he reminds himself that it is an evil thought, refusing to accept it willingly, even to let his thoughts play on it willingly. How much more so to entertain any idea of putting it into effect, chas v'sholem, or even to put it into words. For he who willingly indulges in such thoughts is deemed wicked at such time, whereas the Beinoni is never wicked for a single moment.
Even for a single moment. So again, like we said, the Beinoni cannot control the fact that he's going to have a crazy random thought that's going to come into his head. Right? He can't control it. However, he can control the second thought, right? Am I going to continue to think about that? The example, what's an example? Give us an example.
Yeshua says take every thought captive.
Every thought captive? Okay, very good. Give us a practical example.
Shaul said that.
Oh,
well, where do you think he got it?
2 Corinthians 10. That's where it ended up.
Anyways.
Well, I mean, the thought enters your mind at work.
Okay.
The thought enters your mind at work. You're sitting there and you're going, you know what? I do all kinds of stuff for these guys, and I need an ink pen, and I left mine at home.
Yeah.
I'm going to take this ink pen, and it's going to be, and it's going to be mine. I'm just going to borrow it, and then later you think, you know, I think I just keep it because I actually lost my pen while I was working for these guys.
Well, I was working for them anyway.
Somewhere in the building, my ink pen's over there, so I'm going to keep their ink pen.
Right. So how does that whole domino effect, that whole snowball start? I want that pen.
There's a thought.
There's a thought. I want that pen.
And then you begin to entertain it and
second
rationalize
thought, the entertaining that thought.
Right.
Well, I don't have a pen. Anytime you go start with the well, I don't, or well, I...
rationalization. If
that
you're
is the sinful thought. That's the sinful thought. The fact that you wanted the pen, you can't control that. You're really not held accountable for that. The fact that you dwelt on it was like, how can I get this in my pocket before someone sees, right? All that kind of stuff. You've already crossed the line. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And the Beinoni doesn't do that. The first time the Beinoni says, I want this pen, he's like, it's not my pen. What was I studying in Torah today?
That's a bad
this is, we studied the last portion of Bichu Kosai. We finished Vayikra Baruch Hashem, whatever it is that you push out that thought instantly. With 2 hands, it says. Last paragraph.
For he who willingly indulges in such thoughts is deemed wicked at such time, whereas the Beinoni is never wicked for a single moment. So, too, in matters of affecting a person's relations with his neighbor. As soon as there arises from his heart to his mind some animosity or hatred, chas v'sholem, or jealousy or anger, or a grudge and such like, he gives them no entrance into his mind and will.
So the Alter Rebbe is giving us himself a practical example of this, using Ahavat Yisrael, love of your fellow Jew, which, of course, as we know, doesn't extend to just the Jews that you see over in China that you've never seen and you never met these Jews, but you love them because you're their brother. You're talking about the one who sits next to you in shul, right? Mm-hmm. And he says X, Y, and Z, and he's trying to nudge you all the time. And you, being the Beinoni here, right? You never let that anger you. They talk about Rabbi Hillel Azak and the great Hillel, that there was a gentleman one time, he took a bet to try to see if he couldn't get Hillel to get angry, right? If you took that bet for Shammai, it would have been quick and easy. But with Hillel, he, I don't remember exactly how it goes. You know, Hillel would be in the bath. The guy would be like, quick, Rabbi, you have to come out. I have an important Torah question. He'd, come out. He'd be like, why are the Babylonians' feet flat? And like random Narishkeit that just doesn't mean anything. And he would go on and on and on. And, Hillel's there in his bathrobe like, And he was calm with him the entire time, right? Because Hillel mastered his animal soul, right? And he understood that the mitzvah of love your fellow Jew supersedes the things that I'm feeling and thinking right now, right?
Why do Babylonians have flat feet?
Again, Narishkeit, but you get the idea.
John wrote, how can you say you love God whom you have not seen, and you do not love your brother who you can see?
That's such a huge deal. Straining out a gnat to swallow a camel, yeah? Kind of a similar thing.
On the contrary, his mind exercises its authority and power over the spirit in his heart to do the very opposite and to conduct himself toward his neighbor with the quality of kindness and a display of abundant love.
Again, the other end of the spectrum, right?
To the extent of suffering from him to be extreme limits without becoming provoked into anger, God forbid, or to revenge in kind, God forbid.
Right.
But rather to repay the offenders with favors, as taught in the Zohar, that one should learn from the example of Yosef toward his brothers.
What was Yosef's example? Did he harbor animosity for his
brothers?
Brian.
No.
Go ahead.
He blessed them, and he saw that God was in the whole thing.
Right. He forgave his brothers. They did one of the most heinous things you could possibly do to another brother. And he was never angry at them. Even the part where he was, shuffling around brothers there.
Playing around with them a little bit.
That was only to bring them to Teshuvah, right? He wasn't trying to get back at them. He wasn't trying to make them... He was trying to make sure that they repented, right? But he never held any animosity towards them. As it says, when they came to him after Yaakov died and they said, are you going to kill us now, right? Mm-hmm. He said to them, 10 candles tried to snuff out one. What makes you think one candle could snuff out 10, right? Mm. He forgave them. He forgave them instantly. And that's the end of chapter 12.
That wasn't so long.
Not so long, but it's cut up into 4 days, whereas the 11 is only cut up into 1. Mm-hmm. So what did we learn in chapter 12?
Good stuff.
We talked about the Beinoni.
Beinoni.
What is a Beinoni?
A Beinoni is one who masters his evil inclination.
Really? Because that sounds more like a tzaddik.
No. A tzaddik doesn't have an evil inclination.
He turned it into another godly soul.
Right. A Beinoni fights the fight, but masters it.
Every day. How is a Beinoni different from a tzaddik?
He's mastered his thoughts, words, and deeds, but not his intellect
and emotion. Exactly right. So he still is tempted. He still has to wage the war. He has to fight the fight. How is a Beinoni different from a Rasha? We're still on
Rasha is one who sins. He's a wicked one.
He actually
is not made Teshuvah yet.
He's not done Teshuvah, right? Mm-hmm. Because a tzaddik who sins once is called a Rasha until he repents, and then he's called righteous again, right? So one who lets his evil inclination have control over the small city, over the body, for even an hour, even for a moment, right? They're called a Rasha. Mm-hmm. So the Beinoni toes the line all the time, but he still wants to sin, like a 25-year-old alcoholic, right? Mm-hmm. And this is the point of Deuteronomy 30, we can all be Beinonim. We can all strive to be, and we can accomplish to be a Beinoni. Not all of us are going to be able to be a tzaddik. It's not in the cards for everybody. But we can all be a Beinoni. And we should strive to do that every single day. Right? And God gives us the power to do that every day. As we're going to learn in a couple later chapters, we have the two souls fighting over the body, the godly soul and the animal soul. And God himself comes and helps. And he becomes the third judge. And guess who he sides with, right? He sides with the godly soul. And he says, we have the power to get this done, and I'm going to help you. Right?
The word is near you, in your heart and in your
mouth and in your heart that you should do it.
You should do it.
Amen, amen.
Yeah, you can do it.
Further thoughts?
Words and deeds.
Who would like to close us in prayer? I could if you guys like.
Okay.
Baruch Hashem, Rabbona Shalom, you are awesome and amazing, and your Torah is fantastic, and the secrets that your Torah contains in the Kabbalah and Chassidus are just fascinating to us, and we appreciate everything that you've given us, including this opportunity that you've given us to be able to learn a little bit more about who you really are, what this Mashiach really is, and what it means that we can live together with you forever. We ask that you bless us with your wisdom, your Chochmah Bina V'dat, your wisdom, understanding, and knowledge, that we should be able to integrate that which you've taught us here tonight, so that it would affect us the way that you should decide that it should, each individually, each personally, that we should be able to not just have a surfacey understanding of this material, but that we should actually internalize it and do your will, do your mitzvot as a result. We thank you again for your presence here with us. We hope and pray that you bless us on our way home, and as we take this information throughout your world to create this earth, to take this raw material you've given us and create a dwelling place for you that we could live together forever with the coming of Mashiach. May he come speedily and in our days. Amen.
Amen.
That's it for tonight.
Good.
Join us next week for chapter 13.